Hello, welcome everyone. We're joined by folks from all around the country actually on today's call. So good evening, good morning, depending on what time it is from where you're calling in from. Um, Regardless, we are very happy to have you here today for our info session on Point of Pride's annual Trans Surgery Fund. We hope everything is going well for you so far today, and we thank you in advance for your time and attention in joining us. So my name is Jeff Main. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Point of Pride. I've been with the organization since its founding back in 2016, though we get our roots a little bit earlier than that. I joined as executive director in summer of last year. I have a background in marketing and design. I live in Philadelphia with my wife, our toddler, and our cats, one of whom is very likely to make a cameo at some point during today's presentation.
My name is Tyler, he, him. I am the director of programs here at Point of Pride. So I will be the one that you know as the email guy. I started with Point of Pride as an employee back in January of 23, but I've been volunteering with Point of Pride since very early in 2017. Before that, my experience is back in the healthcare industry, specifically in insurance. So I have a great deal of knowledge about the processes that go into getting healthcare.
And my name is Abby. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the care coordinator, and I have years of experience in coordinating care for disabled adults. I work one-on-one with our recipients to help them navigate using their award, and I help with any issues that may arise. And I'm from Houston, Texas.
Awesome. Thank you both. And I also want to thank Nikki, who's joining us today to provide real-time ASL interpretation. For folks who might need it, you can also turn on Zoom's live captioning feature. And to be honest, Zoom is constantly changing its settings and the way these things operate. So if anyone has any questions or issues, either with the ASL interpretation or with the translation services, please let us know in the chat. Tyler would be happy to help troubleshoot as best we can. So while today's session is going to focus entirely on our annual Trans Surgery Fund, our organization offers financial aid and support through other programs that we wanted to quickly share with you, just in case it's helpful. The HRT Access Fund provides direct financial aid to trans folks who can't afford gender-affirming hormone replacement therapy. The Electrolysis Support Fund does the same thing towards permanent hair removal services, including electrolysis and laser hair removal. The Thrive Fund provides financial aid towards a variety of other types of care. It can look like wigs or prosthetics, fertility preservation, voice training, and much more. Point of Pride also mails out free chest binders and femme shapewear to trans folks who need them entirely for free. And we've served thousands of people in all 50 states and around the world. Each of the programs that I just mentioned has its own application process, timeline, and details. And you can learn more about each of them on our website, www.pointofpride.org. So today's agenda, no need to screenshot. All of the information that we're going over today will be shared with you in an email after the info session. We're also recording today's info session and we'll be posting it to our YouTube channel. First, we're going to chat about the program itself. We're going to go over important dates, share some details about the applicant experience, share a little information about what reviews looks like on our side, explain what it will be like if you are named a recipient of the program, and then we're going to end with an open Q&A. You can feel free to ask questions at any time. Tyler is moderating the Q&A and can answer you right away, or you can also save them for the open discussion at the end. So about the annual Trans Surgery Fund. This is a scholarship-like program that provides direct financial assistance to trans folks who can't afford gender-affirming surgery. To date, this program has awarded over $1.3 million to hundreds of recipients. We're anticipating that for this next cycle, our 2025 cycle, that we should have somewhere between 45 and 75 recipients. It's an estimated range because, as we'll talk about in a little more detail in a bit, our recipient packages look very different from person to person based on their unique and personalized need. And I'd like to stop and just say that access to healthcare is a right that every person deserves, trans or cis, right? Unfortunately, with our current resources, the Surgery Fund continues to be a very competitive program. We expect to get thousands of applications, which means that we expect an award rate of about 3% of everyone who applies. So what are the requirements in order to submit an application? First, that you identify as trans. We take a very broad definition of what that means. It's a very big umbrella, right? So if you identify as not cis, you are eligible. We require that you're 18 years of age or older at the time of your surgery. So for some folks, we have had applicants that are 17 years old in November at the time of applying, that are turning 18 in early 2025, something like that. But yes, as long as you're 18 years of age or older at the time of your surgery, you're eligible. We require that you have financial need that prevents you from affording gender-affirming surgery. We require that you can demonstrate past attempts at affording care. And by this, we mean our reviewers want to learn what steps you have taken in your healthcare journey and that you fully understand the financial roadblocks unique to your situation, that you have exhausted different potential solutions to be able to overcome those challenges. So this might look like research or action taken towards health insurance or financing or appealing an insurance denial, or financial decisions that you might have made, like taking on a second job or creating a GoFundMe or something like that. We require that you complete your surgery in the United States with a US-based surgeon within 18 months of confirming your award. And we require that your surgery takes place on or after March 1st, 2025. That is just purely because of the logistics of this program, which we're going to talk about again in a second. You are eligible to apply for any gender-affirming procedure. Again, we have a really broad definition of what that looks like. We want to have as few restrictions and roadblocks as possible. If you're seeking a procedure that affirms your gender, it is eligible. For surgeries that are multi-step or consist of several procedures like facial feminization surgery, this grant will only cover procedures that can be performed on a single surgery date. You can apply regardless of your employment, housing, disability, or immigration status. You can apply regardless of whether or not you have health insurance. And with health insurance specifically, we do not have any requirements like that you need to have attempted coverage in the past. You need to have received a denial letter or anything like that. We recognize that there are many scenarios in which you might have really inclusive healthcare coverage and still not be able to use it. You can apply regardless of whether or not you're on hormone replacement therapy or taking any other steps in your transition. Your surgeon may have certain requirements in order to be eligible for care through their practice, but our program does not. And you can apply regardless of whether or not you have received funding or support through any of the other programs that we offer here at Point of Pride. Our applications will open on Friday, November 1st. They will close on Saturday, November 30th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is a final deadline. Absolutely no applications can be accepted after this date. So when you apply, whether you do it first thing in the beginning of November or whether you submit it at the end of the day on the last day of November, that has no impact positively or negatively on your likelihood of receiving funding. As a reminder, if you have already scheduled your surgery, it must be on or after March 1st, 2024. This is simply because of the time that it takes our team to be able to review all of the applications, make grant-making decisions, and award recipients. As we'll discuss in a few minutes, recipients will not be selected until February. For international applicants, I know we've got a lot of folks on the call today who are outside of the United States. You are welcome to apply to the surgery fund if you live outside of the US. Due to our nonprofit status, however, all surgeries must be performed in the US and its territories. So that means, in order to apply, you have to be physically and financially able to travel to the United States for your care. At this time, our grants cannot be applied to travel, lodging, or other logistical expenses. Our grants right now are strictly for the healthcare surgery fees procedure itself. So your eligibility to apply to the fund is not affected by whether or not you have insurance. However, if you do have insurance, we kindly ask that you consider your level of access to gender affirming care and explore if utilizing your your insurance coverage is an option before you apply. So we're going to drop these two links in the chat for you to review and bookmark at your convenience. They'll also be available in that email summary after today's info session. These articles are on our blog, and the first is how to approach getting insurance coverage for a trans surgery. And the second is my insurance has denied my gender affirming surgery. Now what? All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect as an applicant. So when you're navigating our application process, you have the option to list someone as a support person. This can be a liaison, a translator, or just someone that's there for general support. For a lot of our past applicants, this has looked like a friend, a chosen or blood family member, a counselor, or a social worker. But it can be anyone in your life who you feel will help you navigate the process and submit a high-quality application. This person will be CC'd on all email notifications regarding your application status, and access can be revoked at any time simply by you contacting us. Support people are also able to apply during the same application cycle, so you can be both an applicant for your own care and a support person for a friend of yours, right, that's also applying for their care. On our website, we have an instruction packet. This will also be in the chat. We'll make sure that this is in that email summary that goes out after the info session. This document is designed to walk you through every single question on our form in advance and explain what our reviewers are hoping to understand about your unique needs through the questions in our form. So we strongly recommend that you consider or even draft your written responses ahead of time. Many former applicants have told us that that was like really beneficial for them to draft something, sit with it, review it, revise before they submitted their application. And as that instruction packet will share with you and we'll talk about more, specific, thorough responses are really key. Our application form will ask you for contact information, optional demographic information about your surgery, and short answer responses in which you're able to demonstrate your financial need and those past attempts at getting care. And again, all these questions are explained within that instruction packet. The form itself is hosted on JotForm, which is a very secure HIPAA-compliant platform, and we store all of the data that you share with us following privacy best practices. More information on all of that can be found in the privacy policy on our website. So some notes. I mentioned that specific, thorough responses are key. We often hear from folks, and in fact, I think it was a question several people on today's call had submitted ahead of time of what is really the best thing that I can do to have a strong, high quality application. And that is through those written responses. So for each written response, you're going to have 800 characters, which is about 160 words. What you share with us is going to be completely confidential. It's only shared with the reviewers who are reading your specific application. And if you are selected as a recipient later, none of your personal information will be shared publicly without your permission. We're asking you again to explain your financial need and tell us a little bit about the obstacles that are in your way to being able to get care. This is not a test of writing skills. Grammar, spelling, or how well you write will not affect your application. What really matters is providing us with specific details so that our reviewers can understand your unique financial situation and those barriers that you're facing in your life. So I'd say don't worry about writing perfect answers. But if you find yourself with extra space, if there's extra characters that are remaining in your response, you might want to consider if there's more that you can share just to help us see that fuller picture. And relatedly with, we are looking for authenticity in your responses. So if you choose to use AI, such as ChatGPT or other tools, we strongly ask that you do so as a tool to edit what you have already written and not create answers entirely. This is just because ChatGPT often creates generic responses and it lacks that personal context that helps our reviewers understand your situation better. Grant awards for this program vary widely, and that's because they're personalized to your unique needs, and they consider holistically things like your existing savings, your insurance status, and other factors. So we expect that in 2025, the average award amount will be around $10,000 to $12,000. Some recipients may need far less, and some recipients might need far more than that. The fund will cover a high percentage of your total surgical, anesthesia, and facility fees. We're hoping in the neighborhood of 70 to 97% of all of that. So you would be responsible for that much smaller percentage of your care with a maximum out-of-pocket expense that'll be specified in your recipient agreement. And so when we say maximum out-of-pocket expense, we're talking about the amount of your total healthcare bill that you would be responsible from, separate from health insurance if applicable. So this amount is not set in stone across all of our recipients because of a number of different factors. A top surgery that costs $10,000, for example, will have a much lower maximum out-of-pocket expense for a recipient compared to a vaginoplasty that might cost $40,000. Regardless of the type of grant award that you receive, all recipients should be expected to cover travel fees, food expenses, time away from work, post-operative nursing care if needed, pre-operative requirements that your doctor will require, such as lab work, imaging, or physicals, and some post-operative medications. So if you are selected as a finalist, or if our reviewers determine that they need additional information, you will be contacted via email. You may be invited to submit additional written responses or participate in a brief phone or online interview. If you are selected as a recipient, we will contact you again via email or phone regarding next steps. The full details of your award will be explained in your recipient agreement. And if you are not selected as a finalist or a recipient, we will notify you via email, and you are welcome to apply again during the next application cycle. This is an annual program, which means that the following November, we would reopen for applications. I do want to note that our team will store your application for a full year. And in the past, we've had opportunities where we've continued to pair additional candidates with grants as we, Point of Pride, receive grants, resources, or new opportunities. So there is the possibility that you may be contacted much later in the year via email if that is the case. So we have a full list of frequently asked questions on our website. I know we're going to have a Q&A later on, but I did just want to quickly share a couple of the most common questions that we've received in the last couple of years. So what are the age requirements? Applicants must be at least 18 years old by your surgery date, and we have no upper limit for age. We've had recipients that are in their 70s and perhaps beyond. Are there any weight requirements? So while Point of Pride does not have a weight requirement, we also recognize that many surgeons do. So it will be your responsibility to meet requirements set forth by your preferred surgeon, which might include weight, mental health, or WPATH requirements. Are there any additional requirements for international applicants? So international applicants will be asked some additional questions about preparedness to travel to the US. So in our application form, we'll ask you to share any research or action you've taken regarding travel considerations, such as your visa or passport, your transportation, and your lodging. You'll note what you anticipate your post-operative care plans will look like, including who's traveling with you and accompanying you for surgery. This will also be an opportunity for you to explain if you anticipate any challenges in traveling to the United States as well. Can the surgery fund reimburse past healthcare expenses? Unfortunately, no. So we understand, the challenges of debt and medical loans that so many of us just have to deal with in order to access care. But the way that this program is designed, you must apply for financial aid towards a future surgery. Our grants are paid directly to healthcare providers on your behalf for your procedure before it takes place. Can you help me find a surgeon? Unfortunately, no. Our team does not have the expertise or the ability to provide personalized referrals, or recommendations for trans-affirming surgeons. And there's a couple reasons for that, but mainly it's because we recognize that every person's surgery goals and priorities are really unique. There are so many factors, a given surgeon's specialty or expertise, the procedure type that might be right for you and your health, whether you're willing and able or not to travel for surgery. That means that finding the right surgeon is a highly individualized decision. So therefore, you will ultimately be the best judge of who your provider should be. We recommend that you reach out to local LGBTQ centers and trans support groups, as well as your current healthcare providers or your insurance company if you're insured, for recommendations to help as you research. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the reviews process. Excuse me, as one of those cats I mentioned has really decided he needed to make a cameo. So as I mentioned, there is no advantage, positive or negative, to you submitting your application earlier in the month of November rather than later in the month of November. Once we receive applications, our staff, Tyler, hides all identifying personal information such as your name, your email address, and your phone number. Your application then gets shuffled into a randomized packet alongside 49 others that are now ready for review. These packets get distributed to our grant-making committee. That consists of our board of directors and our community grant-making fellows, who are specially trained volunteers. All of our CGFs identify as trans. And to minimize the impacts of unconscious bias, all reviewers follow the same scoring rubric, and we all receive continuing education on a number of different topics. In addition, your application will be reviewed by at least 3 different reviewers. So we really do try to put a variety of perspectives, of lived experiences into these smaller subgroups to make sure that every application gets a fair, unbiased review. And I know that a couple folks during the registration for this info session had some questions about whether or not this is a lottery selection style process grant. It is not. It's not a lottery. We are reviewing each and every application based on need and impact. And that reviews process takes a lot of time. right? Especially because we are anticipating receiving thousands of applicants this cycle. So we expect that it will be somewhere between 4 and 12 weeks from the end of the application window, so the last day of November, to be able to review and select our recipients. And again, just because of the competitiveness of the program, we anticipate that 3% of applicants will be selected as recipients. This is unfortunately a competitive process. As an applicant, you will hear from Point of Pride in late February or early March regarding your status. And we recommend checking your spam filter, or something that you can do today even is add pointofpride.org to your safe senders list. That just makes sure that you never miss another email or message from us. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit about what you can expect if you are selected as a recipient of the program. So you will be contacted via email, again, late February, early March, and that email will contain a number of documents and information. The first is a grant agreement. So this explains the full details of your award. In that agreement, it will list your grant award amount. This is going to vary depending on the type of procedure that you need and your own individual financial circumstances. It'll also specify the grant timeline. So you'll have a window of 18 months for you to schedule and utilize your grant. So what this means is that you might choose or need to have surgery that takes place, beyond 18 months from now. That's okay. But we say within 18 months of notification, we would like your surgery to be scheduled and paid in full. That email will also contain a couple of other forms. So I'll go through them quickly with you. We'll ask you to complete a HIPAA disclosure. So this names Tyler, Abby, and myself as points of contact that can speak to your surgeon's office on your behalf and fulfill payments. There'll be a support person disclosure. So if you opted to name a support person when you submit an application, this is just a quick form that confirms you're still comfortable with that person being included in future correspondence about your grant award or payments or things like that. You can choose to remove that person or change that person if you'd like. We'll ask you to complete a partner authorization form. So Point of Pride builds partnerships with other values-aligned nonprofits that serve the trans community in accessing healthcare. And so these other organizations offer services that we don't. Things like post-operative nursing care or free flights within the United States to be able to get to your healthcare provider. So we can refer you to these trusted partner organizations so you can learn more about these services if that's something that you choose. Only in the event that you opt in on this form would we ever share your personal contact information with a third-party organization. And then the last form is a media disclosure agreement. You'll see a screenshot of what that looks like on the right-hand side of this slide. In this form, you have the option to tell us exactly how you would like your name, photos, and other information to be shared publicly. So for your privacy and security, you can remain as anonymous as you would like. Grant payments. The bulk of your grant award will be paid directly to your surgeon's office on your behalf. You may also be paid up to $50 in coverage for any post-operative prescription medications like pain medication or other things your provider might prescribe. We're able to help cover that. And so if you follow us on social media or if you've been poking around our website, you might have seen some recipient stories from folks that were awarded through the program in past years. So as a recipient, you have complete control over what that narrative looks like, including whether or not you choose to use your name, your photo, or identifying personal details within your recipient bio. So we encourage our recipients to write their stories in a way that feels really affirming and safe for them. This means that many recipients choose not to publicly disclose personal or even traumatic details that they might have shared privately in their original application. So just because when you apply, you tell us about maybe disability status, health or mental health status, immigration status, lived experiences. You don't have to include those things in your public bio. With so many mainstream stories that focus on trans hardship, we believe this is an opportunity for you to have complete control over your story and to foster trans joy. So in this image on the right of the slide, you'll see that some recipients have chosen to use their photo. Some have chosen to have it blurred. In some instances, we'll use stock photos that represent the ethnicity origin of that recipient. And so if you'd like, please visit our website to read through some of their stories just for examples of what this looks like. Nothing ever gets published without your permission. And so I want to say thank you all so much again for your time and attention. When you leave today's info session, you'll see a link to a quick feedback form. Please take a minute to fill that out. Let us know your thoughts. And thank you in advance for doing so. You can always connect with us via email at surgeryfund@pointofpride.org. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, sorta, TikTok, sorta. And you can always find us online at www.pointofpride.org. So with that, we're going to go into the open Q&A portion. I know Tyler has been answering a bunch of questions already via the chat, so thank you so much. Someone asks, does it matter how much savings you have already? Are we able to apply even if we don't have any savings yet? Yes, absolutely. So in our application form, you will have the option to tell us how much savings you have, including if you have no savings. We ask that question to just, again, have better understanding and context about your unique financial situation, but it does not impact your eligibility in either direction. Are you able, so another attendee writes, are you able to use a surgeon that's outside of the state that you live in? Yes, absolutely. So many of our recipients, just by nature of accessibility, of being able to find a competent, affirming provider, do have to travel. So you are not restricted geographically to seeing a care provider within a certain radius of where you live. The only geographical restriction that we have is that that provider must be based in the United States or its territories, and that's just due to our nonprofit status. Oh, and I'll just as a super quick reminder, please use the Q&A tool and not the raise your hand tool, just because of Zoom settings. That way I can make sure I'm seeing your questions. So one attendee writes, I've had surgery before funded through GoFundMe, which was botched, causing me health issues and more dysphoria. Is this something that you can help with? Yes, absolutely. So that is something that you can share in the written responses of your application. We have had many recipients come through the program that are seeking revision to a past procedure. So again, we have a really broad understanding of what procedures are eligible. Revisions are certainly part of it, but any procedure that is affirming, any surgical procedure that affirms your gender identity is eligible, including revision. Another attendee asks, does this grant cover one surgery or more than one? So this grant is for a single surgery. For procedures that are multi-step, so facial feminization surgery is a great example because there might be many different interventions that happen at a single time. You can think of it as this grant covers everything that can take place in a single surgery visit, a single time under anesthesia. I hope that helps clarify. I see a couple comments in the Q&A from various attendees who live outside of the US. Hello to folks in Uganda and the Philippines. So yes, you are totally eligible to apply. Due to our 501c3 status, we will require you to seek your care with a US-based provider. Unfortunately, at this time, our grants are specifically for the care coverage itself and not for the logistical expenses of travel, of lodging, of transportation. So in your application, when you note that you're an international applicant, there'll be a couple extra questions that we ask you that just help us understand your preparedness to travel to the US. Okay. So someone writes, would surgeries considered purely cosmetic and not covered by insurance, like a hair transplant, be eligible? And the answer is yes. So again, I really just want to drive home for other attendees because it's so important. Any gender affirming procedure, anything that affirms your gender is eligible. And we know that so many of the different types of care that we need as trans folks is considered cosmetic by insurance. So we don't use insurance coverage as any sort of eligibility. Yep, I see another attendee is asking about like a clavicle reduction. So that's the same answer for you as well. Again, if it's affirming to your gender, yes, it is eligible. Our form will have a multi-select option of some of the most commonly requested surgical procedures. And there's also an other where you can write in what it is that you're seeking. So if you're seeking a specific type of care not listed, please just click other and write it in. So one attendee asks, this might have been mentioned earlier, what is the maximum amount awarded towards surgery? So great question and a tough question. Unfortunately, there's no easy way for us to give that answer because so many different factors go into it. We have awarded recipients grants that are less than $5,000 because that's all that they needed for their particular procedure with their particular provider. We have awarded folks in the tens of thousands, again, because some surgeries can just be way more expensive and they might have other financial barriers in their lives. So you might recall in one of those earlier slides, I showed our program seeks to cover between 70 and 97% of your total surgical need. So the burden, right, on our recipients would be somewhere between 3 and 30% of what that need is. So I hope that helps clarify as you think about your own needs and the type of procedure that you might be applying for. All right, thanks everybody. I'm just pausing to catch up on these questions. Cool. I'm seeing a couple folks asking questions about the timeline. So you can apply beginning November 1st. The last day to apply is November 30th. So it's the whole month of November. And when you apply within that range has no impact, positive or negative, on your likelihood of moving forward. So please, we always get a huge rush of applications in the first 2 days. Don't feel like you need to do that. This is not a lottery process. We will read all applications with the same time and care and attention, regardless of when it's submitted. So definitely feel free to take your time, write your short answer responses, review them, and submit them when you feel ready. I'm seeing one or two attendees ask about receiving disability benefits and whether or not that might impact eligibility. So it has no bearing on eligibility, but that is something that we would encourage you to consider sharing in your short answer responses. Many of our recipients 1 in 2 folks that we serve live with a disability or chronic illness. Many of them are receiving disability benefits or other types of social support that then create extra barriers, right? Like you won't be able to save as much money towards your healthcare if you're receiving those benefits. Those are things that you can share with us in your application because, again, it just helps us understand those barriers in your life, and how you need that support to be able to get care. An attendee writes, would you consider support people to be a therapist or a partner? Yes, absolutely. So a support person can be anyone in your life that you trust that can be there to help you navigate the form itself, your application responses, email follow-up regarding your application. So yes, many past applicants have named their therapists, have named significant others, blood or chosen family. It's really, who you trust and who you feel can support you if you need it. It's also totally optional. I see someone was asking, what if we don't have a support person? You don't have to list one. You can just skip right over that. So an attendee writes, can you apply if you have health insurance but are unable to find out if it will cover your surgery, or if your health insurance partially covers your surgery but you can't afford the rest of it? So yes, as part of the application, there will be a question specific to health insurance in which you can indicate that you are insured. And then there's a follow-up question that I think is the perfect spot for you to say it's unclear whether or not your procedure will be covered. In your short answer responses, you can give us a little bit more color, right, to why that is. So we've had applicants say, I keep contacting my provider, I'm getting the runaround, or they said yes, and then they denied a different type of care, or I live in a state where this is now under fire. All of those things, again, provide that context. So when I mentioned earlier, like research or action that you've taken around health insurance is really useful for our reviewers to know. That's what we're looking for. Not necessarily, are you insured or are you not, but more tell us about how you're exploring different options or the roadblocks that have gotten in your way. Well, so someone asked, is finalist and recipient the same thing? So great question, and I just want to clarify real fast. So no, they're not. Again, because we're expecting to receive thousands of applications, the way our reviewers have moved through the process in past years is that we have had a finalist cohort that we've then evaluated to make that final recipient decision making. So many finalists do end up becoming recipients, but we typically ask a round of follow-up questions just to check for any major changes since the time of application. Or if we just need clarity, like if a reviewer found something that was shared to be unclear, we've certainly had instances where due to like technical error or just human error, there might be like a mismatch of information we just want to check on that sort of thing. The finalist process is usually 2 to 5 questions, and many of them are very short answer. Tyler will keep me honest, but I think the way it typically works is, like I said, almost all finalists do end up becoming recipients. We really try to avoid contacting folks unnecessarily. So someone asks if a person cannot travel due to financial problems, will he be refused in the grant? So that's a great question, and it's a tough one, right? Because of course we recognize that you're applying for the fund specifically because there are financial barriers in your life. I would encourage you to apply regardless. We do not outright reject people who are traveling, especially international applicants, because of lack of funds for the logistics. We actually really want to understand more like the visa, the passport, who's accompanying you, like those other considerations at the time of your application. Sharing those details with us are more important at the time you apply than like your savings or what you might be able to contribute towards transportation. The way that this has functionally looked for international recipients in the past is they do tend to get those grant awards that are 97%, right, of the total package, so that they're able to use what limited savings or funding they might have elsewhere on the travel and transportation side of it. So yeah, I would strongly encourage you to apply, and those are just compelling reasons or compelling details that you can include in your short answer responses. So this is a great question. Someone asks, what were commonalities between the recipients who received the grant in the last few years? In other words, is there anything a participant can do to make their application stand out? So like we talked about earlier in one of those slides about those specific responses, we really want to understand you holistically. I think thorough, detailed responses are really key. And we spell out as much as we're able to in our instruction packet what it is our reviewers are looking for. If you look over our past recipients, however, I think the commonality, what they all tend to have is this sense that they are just stuck, right? So maybe they live in a state that is at risk for anti-trans legislation, or maybe they are receiving disability benefits. Their healthcare coverage specifically excludes trans care. They're unable to save above a certain threshold without losing their benefits. They cannot move their state because they're the caregiver of a child or an elder. And so they're just stuck. They have no way to really move forward and pay for their care out of pocket, right? Unless they had this external support through a grant. So I think that as you consider your own, and this is for everyone on the call, right? As we consider our own levels of privilege, of access, of where we live, of health insurance status or disability status, things like that, you might want to think about, what are the sticking points for me that prevent me from being able to get care, and maybe that can help frame how you approach your written responses. So I hope that helps. I'm seeing a couple questions that have to do with lived experience, right? So I'll just say that if you have experienced traumatic events in your life, if you have had, mental health struggles, if there's been self-harm in your history, things like that, you can feel free to disclose that in your application. Again, these details are not shared outside of the three specific reviewers that are reading your materials. Many applicants choose to disclose personal and often traumatic details from their lives to provide color to their overall situation. And so again, those are details you can feel safe to share as you choose. They're not details that will be disclosed by us. And if you are named as a recipient of the program, they're not details that are expected to show up in your recipient bio, which you have complete control over. So for the couple of folks that were just concerned about eligibility or whether or not they could say those things in an application, you can share those things with us. As you review the instruction packet, you'll see we actually just ask you to avoid putting your name in your written responses, to avoid putting things like social media handles or stuff like that. We actually want to try to have avoid any bias. And at the same time, our reviewers, if they suspect that they might know the person that is applying for help, we have a whole policy around conflict of interest that we follow internally. So I think I might have just answered a couple folks' questions all at once there. If anything is unclear, please let us know in the Q&A. Someone asks, is there a limiting age for applicants or recipients? Only a minimum. We require that you are 18 years of age at the time of your surgery. We have had applicants who are 17 in November who are turning 18 by March of the following year. That's totally great. We have no upper limits or thresholds for age. So Tyler probably knows the exact age, but I know we've had recipients in their 70s and possibly higher. I just want to pause as I'm catching up and thank everyone on the call today. This has been such a great discussion, and we really do appreciate all of the thoughtfulness in the Q&A. So thank you so much, everyone. Does the grant cover hospital costs, for example, anesthesia? So yes, you will be responsible for some percentage of your care, but covered fees are your surgeon's fees and any facility or anesthesia fees. Those are all underneath the purview of the grant. Someone asks, is the application shared with your support person? So yes, the way our process works, both you and your support person, again, if you decide to name one in your application, you'll both get a copy of your application immediately after you apply. Your support person will also get instructions for opting out if they did not consent to receive those messages. Someone asks, so as long as the surgery date is after March 1st, 2025, is it okay to have surgery in 2026? So yes, absolutely. We give all of our grantees a window of 18 months to be able to utilize their grant. And by utilize, we just mean have a scheduled surgery date and a balance of zero, that we have been able to successfully pay your grant. Many of our recipients choose to have surgery a little bit outside that window. I mean, some recipients get surgery almost immediately, depending on, again, their needs, availability, things like that. But other recipients need extra time. So yes, if you were awarded in March 2025, you could have surgery in 2026 and even beyond that, depending on your needs. We try to be as flexible with that as we can be. So even if that was an area of concern, you could certainly, email us later on. So one attendee writes, is Point of Pride the only entity like this in the US that provides surgery grants? Do you all have other resources for assistance? So great question. Unfortunately, there are very few grants like this one that we are aware of, and Tyler, Abby, and myself are constantly keeping our ear to the ground to learn of other opportunities. I know there is a group called Gender Bands that might actually be accepting applications now-ish. There's the Jim Collins Foundation. And there might be one or two smaller funds that have different levels of availability and access and things. So again, unfortunately, I don't know the full details of all those programs. However, in terms of other resources, I will share that we provide all applicants in our email follow-up a pretty exhaustive list of other financial opportunities. We have a couple of resource blogs on our website that document other ways that you might be able to move forward and access care. So not just through a health insurance provider if you are insured, but also, a lot of folks are curious about care credit or curious about launching a GoFundMe and crowdsourcing towards care. It's unfortunate that so many of us have to do that, but we recognize that it is a lived reality for a lot of folks. So in that email that we send to all applicants, we try to list out resources as best we can. I'll always recommend that when in doubt, your local LGBTQ center, and I say local broadly, for international folks on the call, it might be a little harder to access depending on where you live. But really, the LGBT groups in your state, your region, your country are the ones that are best informed of other resources that might be available to you. We're a national organization, so it can just be really hard for us to keep a finger on the pulse of everything that could be available to you. All right, I want to thank everybody. I know we just hit time. I'm going to go over just a few minutes to let folks who might have a couple other questions ask them in the Q&A. I'm also going to just review some of the stuff Tyler has answered, make sure that we've covered everything here. Great. So this was a question someone asked. So if I'm accepted, do I get to choose my surgeon? So yes, absolutely. We really do not want to, it's such an individualized personal decision that, of course, we would like you to be the one that chooses the surgeon that's right for you and your care needs. So on our side, our only requirements is that the surgery takes place in the United States or its territories with a US licensed surgeon. So another attendee asks, what about aftercare surgery? Does this grant cover that? So when I had mentioned earlier, one of the forms that we'll ask you to complete is a partner authorization form. We are connected with groups that provide aftercare, but we do not cover the expenses associated with aftercare. So we would encourage you to talk to your surgeon about what those aftercare expectations look like so that you can just have a better sense of the expense and the logistics, and B, whether or not you would like to be connected to one of those trusted partner organizations. We would then facilitate that introduction to see if those services would be right for you. Cool. Someone said, I hopped in late. Will I be able to watch this on YouTube? Yes. We have a very small YouTube channel. We're recording today's session and we will make it available there within the next day or two. Another attendee asks, can funds be used for dental procedures? So that would be, candidly, that would be new territory for us. However, like I said earlier, yes, if you are seeking a dental procedure that is affirming to your gender identity, you can write that in as an other option. Our grant making committee might have some follow-up questions for you if you moved further through the process. But we really do try to take a very open-ended understanding of what gender affirming surgery looks like. So that can include dental. Someone else asks about having a large sum of medical debt. and asks, will this affect my eligibility to receive the grant? So for folks that are listening that have medical debt, student debt, other types of debt, these are compelling details that you can share in your written responses about financial information. Many of our recipients are dealing with some sort of debt, whether it's medical, educational, or something else, and it greatly impacts their ability to be able to save for surgery. So that is a detail that would really help our reviewers understand your situation. So someone asks, how does the grant work if my healthcare is covered by the VA? So we know that the VA is really hit or miss with their coverage when it comes to trans healthcare. So we will ask you to try to have them cover it if it's feasible. We also say that, recognizing that it just might not be feasible or safe for you. So regardless of whether or not they do pay a portion, your procedure would still be eligible. I hope that helps clarify. See. Another attendee says, I have very good health insurance, but it's under my unsupportive dad's plan, so I can't use it for healthcare. Uh, yeah, that's unfortunately a really common occurrence with our applicants and our recipients, that you might be on a healthcare plan with family members that explicitly tell you you cannot use it towards your transition related care. So when we ask for insurance status on our application form, there's an option where you can indicate that you are unwilling or unsure if you're able to use it. And so we'll strongly recommend that you give us more detail about this in your long answer section. So you can tell us, I cannot use this plan because my dad is unsupportive. But that alone does not affect your eligibility. Insurance status does not affect your eligibility, but it is compelling to know if you can't use your insurance. I hope that helps clarify. Someone writes, my insurance excludes gender affirming care. Unfortunately, that is a really common experience. So we would ask you to document that in your application. Tell us how you know, right? So like, did you call, speak to your provider? There's a policy in your state, things like that. That's part of that research or action that you've taken that demonstrates prior effort. So someone says, I'm the founder of an LGBTQ organization in my area. I won't include the name. It's something I would like to mention in my application, but would this make my application identifiable? You can certainly talk about your organization, and this is for everyone, right? Your employer, whether or not you go to school, whether or not you're on social media, you're involved in other community groups. Like you can talk about these experiences that make you you, and give us that color. But yes, to your point, avoiding the name would be really helpful, just so that our we don't have any accidental bias with our reviews process. As I mentioned, there have been situations where folks have said, you know, I'll use an example of an application I read where they were like, I'm a drag performer in Philly. And I was like, ooh, I happen to live in Philadelphia. I could conceivably know, as I'm continuing to read this application, who this person is. We just reassign those. We really operate out of an abundance of caution thing. But even if you were to disclose something that made you identifiable, it does not, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, oh my gosh. You can
Preclude?
tell that preclude, yeah. I was going to say it doesn't make you ineligible. We don't receive applications and then we say, oops, you put your full name in the short answer, therefore we're not going to review this. So what Tyler does in part of our reviews process is also redact identifying information as best we can from the short answer responses too. So hope that helps clarify. And thank you for staying with me as I tried to find the right words. So someone asks, thank you for your answers. They have been very helpful. Should people of fair skin with the ability to live life without racial profiling, yet still being a person of color, or a member of a more disadvantaged group, apply? In other words, how much should we weigh our privileges to our disadvantages when applying so as to not take up space for the less fortunate? So anonymous attendee, I'd like to thank you for this really thoughtful question. I can tell it's coming from a really considered and empathetic place, so I really appreciate that. For you and for other folks on the call, you might have seen that on our webpage, we have something called a self-assessment. This program is designed to help trans folks who otherwise cannot access care. And so we do ask all of our applicants to consider things related to privilege, right? So our self-assessment will ask whether or not you have health insurance coverage. If not, whether or not you qualify for Medicaid. Are you a citizen or a documented immigrant? Do you consider yourself healthy or able-bodied? In other words, not living with a chronic or long-standing illness. And then our last question is, do you identify as white or do you experience white or light skin privilege? If, as you consider that self-assessment, which again asks a number of different questions, I only said a couple just now, and you find yourself saying yes to most of the questions, you might consider stepping back to make space for trans siblings who mostly answered no. That said, even if you answered yes to every single question, you are still eligible to apply. So I would encourage you to make that decision totally for yourself. I will also share when it comes to identifying as white or experiencing light skin privilege, we have found that a tremendous number of folks that we have served, especially in the last 3 years, are white folks who are living in rural areas who are really at risk of the implications of the onslaught of anti-trans legislation that we're all experiencing, right? Some of our programs, like the vast majority of applicants, come from Florida, from Texas, from Tennessee. So I'd also say, as you consider whether or not you choose to apply versus making space for other applicants, just to think of all those things holistically, and not just white privilege or white light-skinned passing privilege. I hope that helps. Another attendee asks, what if I'm homeless? So you does not affect your eligibility. That is a really compelling detail that we would strongly encourage you to share. There is an optional demographic questionnaire baked into our application form where it will ask you, have you experienced or are you currently experiencing housing insecurity? Many of our recipients are navigating some form of housing insecurity. Where we would really encourage you to provide a lot of detail and color in your written responses is about what your post-operative environment looks like. Our reviews committee wants to make sure that you are in a space that is safe and conducive to a really great health outcome. And that if you're not right now, we'd like to know what plans might be in place for you in the future to make sure that when you are receiving surgery, you are in an environment that's really safe and conducive to healing. Cool. Again, so many folks are really staying with us through this extended Q&A. I'm deeply appreciative, so thank you all. I see someone just asked, I'm unable to save for surgery due to being physically disabled, and therefore I can't get a job. Would I be eligible even though I'm looking for a job at my campus? So yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, like I might have mentioned quickly earlier, roughly half the people that we serve live with a disability or chronic illness. Many of them are unable to work. That is one of those compelling details that you can include in your short answer responses to indicate your financial situation, your lack of income, things like that. All right. I'm seeing the Q&A with no open questions right now. I will give just another minute. All right. So with that, I do want to thank you all again for your time and your attention today. I think I stopped sharing a little too soon. Let me just go back to here. So again, if you think of any questions that we didn't get to cover today, you can connect with us via the information on this slide. When you leave today's info session, you'll see a link to that feedback form. Thank you in advance. Thank you to Nikki for joining us today and providing ASL interpretation throughout. We deeply appreciate your services today. And thank you all. Wherever you live, hope you're having a lovely day, evening, night. Take care.